After Grandma passed away, she left behind a massive fortune. The whole family was thrilled. My cousin Jobin got Grandma's lakefront villa. My uncle got her 500-square-meter clothing factory in the south of town. Even my meanest aunt got a Jade Guanyin statue. When the will finally reached my name, everyone quietly breathed a sigh of relief. I devoted 10 years to taking care of Grandma. But all I got was, Ms. Zhou Xiaoya, Mrs. Shen Yuzhen leaves you the 20 old chipaos inside the rosewood chest. When the lawyer read that out loud, the room went silent for 2 seconds. My aunt cracked first and burst out laughing. Jobin kept looking at his phone, but his shoulders shook as he tried not to laugh. My uncle covered his mouth, coughed, and forced his grin back down. As they laughed, I stared at Grandma's stern portrait. She wasn't smiling. Just like when she was alive, she looked at me with that same cold expression. My uncle's family carefully checked their inheritance, then signed the papers one stroke at a time. The lawyer got up to leave, but before he left, he gave me a long, meaningful look. At the time, I had no idea what that look meant. Once the outsiders were gone, Jobin stretched while gaming, glanced at Grandma's portrait, and casually asked me, "Xiaoya, why'd Grandma leave you those qipaos? Did she expect you to wear them?" As he talked, Jobin looked me up and down with a mocking grin. I heard those were all from when Grandma was young. Grandma was famous for being gorgeous back then with curves and everything, not like you, all skinny and flat. My aunt squeezed out a few crocodile tears and hugged my shoulder, pretending to cry. She was covered in Grandma's gold jewelry. The cold metal dug painfully into my shoulder. "Xiaoya, don't blame your grandma.
You're a girl. You're going to get married eventually.
Money comes and goes. She knew you'd miss her, so she left you something to remember her by. You should be grateful." Your aunt's right. Those qipaos may be old, but they're made from fine silk and satin. You might even get a decent price if you sell them. Dad, you think they're antiques or something? Who'd pay for those? You little punk. Jobin raised his hands in surrender, then sank back onto the couch and kept gaming. "Xiaoya, don't listen to your cousin's nonsense." I nodded to show I understood. Once they were done pretending to care, their tone changed fast. "This lakefront villa belongs to your cousin now. Family is family, but property is property. You staying here isn't appropriate. Grandma left you something too, and you already signed for it. So pack your stuff and move out as soon as you can. Grandma only let you stay here while she was seriously ill, so taking care of her would be easier. You're not planning to squat here, are you? And Grandma said the qipaos inside the rosewood chest are yours. Don't you dare take the chest too. Watch how you talk to her. Your cousin's still young and immature. Don't hold it against him. Tell you what, I'll give you 2,000 yuan from the villa's rent. You leave the rosewood chest here." 2,000 yuan. Grandma's lakefront villa was one of the city's earliest luxury homes, downtown yet quiet, surrounded by greenery. It rented for at least 200,000 yuan a year. The rosewood chest alone was worth at least 20,000 yuan. 2,000 wasn't even pocket change. I watched the smug grin curl across Jobin's face and clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palm, but I couldn't feel the pain. I silently nodded. "Okay, thanks, Uncle." My uncle's family looked pleased by how obedient I seemed. "Grandma's gone, but we're still family. You can always come back anytime. This will always be your home." Their warm words only sent a chill through me. I'd heard lines like that for 20 years. I knew exactly what they really meant. Grandma was gone, so I shouldn't bother them anymore. My uncle's family jumped up, eager to leave. My aunt's gold jewelry jingled all the way out. Jobin didn't even glance at me. He walked out staring at his phone, busy texting his girlfriend. Then my uncle's phone call came through the thin wall. "Stay on top of the factory transfer. Get those contracts switched into my name ASAP. We're going big this year." I heard every word perfectly clearly. The lawyer finished checking the paperwork and got up to leave. But before leaving, he gave me another loaded look. Back then, I still didn't understand what he was trying to tell me. When I stepped out of the law office, the sun was brutal. A July afternoon felt like a giant steamer, with heat shimmering everywhere. I squeezed into the sliver of shade at the bus stop and waited. Sweat ran down my back. My t-shirt was soaked through. My uncle's car rolled past me. The window rolled down. My uncle leaned out and cheerfully offered me a ride. Cool air spilled through the window and brushed my face, giving me one brief second of relief. "You're letting all the AC out." "She's drenched in sweat. I'd have to clean the car. Roll it up. Let's go." The window slid shut, and the black taillights warped in the heat haze before disappearing around the corner. The bus arrived soon after. I got on and took a seat by the window. The street outside looked exactly as it had for 10 years. Even the storefront signs hadn't changed. The hardware store's red sign had faded in the sun. Steam still rose from the bun shop's baskets. At the fruit stand, half a watermelon sat under plastic wrap, its red flesh exposed. I stared at the familiar street, and one thought suddenly surfaced. It's finally over. At the entrance to Grandma's neighborhood, the security guard leaned halfway out of his booth and called to me. "Xiaoya, you're here. I'm sorry for your loss." I knew the guard well. For 10 years, I'd come at least 3 times a week to cook, bring medicine, bathe Grandma, and clean the house. Whenever I left late and found the gate locked, he'd patiently open it for me. Sometimes he'd even carry my groceries upstairs. I nodded without speaking, took out my familiar key, and opened the lakefront villa. Grandma's room looked exactly the same, clean, tidy, with the faint smell of medicine in the air. On the nightstand was a photo of her and Joe Bin, taken when he graduated from college overseas. In the photo, Grandma was smiling so hard her eyes disappeared, the wrinkles at their corners blooming like flowers. I'd never seen her smile like that. Grandma actually loved taking pictures. Photos covered the walls and cabinets. Grandma with Joe Bin, with my uncle, with my aunt, but not a single one with me. I'd spent 10 years in that room cooking, doing laundry, cleaning up after her, bathing her, changing dressings, yet there wasn't a single trace of me anywhere. I looked down at my hands, layered with calluses and split winter sores. My swollen knuckles barely looked like a young woman's hands anymore. Those 10 years felt like a dream. Grandma was gone, and so was every sign of what I'd done for her. Grandma had gone so suddenly that the closet was still exactly as I'd left it when I rushed to the hospital with her change of clothes. I opened the closet and found the qipaos that had once been stored in the rosewood chest, dumped in a heap like wilted vegetables. I gave a bitter, silent smile. I picked them up one by one, hung them carefully, laid them on the bed, and smoothed out every wrinkle. As I gently touched the old qipaos, something made me reach for the dark green one. That dark green qipao had always been Grandma's favorite. Its lines were simple, the piping was stitched flawlessly, and every knotted button was intricate. It was soft, yet dignified, and whenever Grandma wore it, people couldn't stop complimenting her. I held the qipao against myself and looked in the mirror. The woman in the mirror had slightly hunched shoulders and rough skin. I looked completely out of place in something so elegant. Still, I took off my clothes and awkwardly slipped it on. The reflection looked like a stranger, without an ounce of Grandma's grace. I was about to take it off when my fingers felt a small, hard lump inside the left waist seam. I leaned closer. A hidden pocket had been sewn there with such fine stitches that you'd never notice it unless you looked carefully. The pocket wasn't sewn shut. I slipped 2 fingers inside and pulled out something small, a photograph. In it, 7-year-old me was wrapped in the arms of a beautiful woman wearing that dark green qipao. We were both beaming at the camera. On the back were the words, Xiaoya's favorite qipao. As I stared at those words, a buried memory suddenly came loose. When I was little, Grandma always wore this one whenever she came to see me. So it wasn't Grandma's favorite qipao, it was mine. When I was 8, both my parents died in a car accident. I was supposed to be sent to an orphanage. Grandma took me home instead. The very day my aunt found out, she showed up furious. Mom, raising a kid is no small thing. Food, clothes, school, everything costs money. You're already this old. How are you supposed to raise her? I have a friend who can't have kids. Just give Xiaoya to her. She's only a girl. Feed her until she's grown, marry her off, and at least you'll get some bride price money. That money could help buy Xiaobin a house. From that day on, I lived with Grandma. And from that day on, I knew Joe Bin and I were never treated the same. Every lunar New Year's Eve, Joe Bin sat proudly near the head of the table. Grandma piled food into his bowl until it was overflowing. The relatives took turns praising him. The family's eldest grandson will make us all proud someday. With my aunt and uncle smiling proudly, young Joe Bin showed off the test where he'd scored 98. But when I happily brought out my own perfect 100-point test, all Grandma said was, "What's the point of a girl doing so well in school? You're just going to get married someday. Go to the kitchen and learn how to cook." That day, I sat by the kitchen stove staring at my perfect test and swallowed my tears along with a bowl of vegetables. Every holiday, Grandma bought Joe Bin brand new clothes and shoes. What I got were Joe Bin's old hand-me-downs after he'd outgrown them. I wasn't allowed to look disappointed. If I did, Grandma would get angry. At Lunar New Year, Grandma would hand Joe Bin a fat red envelope in front of everyone, stuffed with crisp new bills. He'd wave the stack around proudly, making sure everyone saw how much Grandma favored him. I always got one wrinkled 50 yuan bill. As we got older, the gap between our worlds only grew wider. Grandma gave Joe Bin 100,000 yuan, and he toured 16 countries across Europe, seeing a world I'd never known. When he wanted to road trip across the country, Grandma gave him 400,000 yuan for an RV. When he wanted to study abroad, Grandma gave him 800,000 yuan. Me? I never asked for anything. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid to. Senior year of college, I earned a guaranteed spot in graduate school. After tuition aid, I only needed 30,000 yuan. I hesitated for a long time before finally going to Grandma. "Grandma, I got into grad school. Could I borrow 30,000 yuan for tuition?" "Grad school? What do you need all that education for? You think you're going to bring honor to this family like my grandson can? Go find a husband. Maybe your bride price money can help my grandson." Grandma said it so casually, as if she'd just handed down the sentence for my entire life. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Then my aunt appeared, her face suddenly glowing with enthusiasm. "Grad school sounds great. I have a nephew whose family is loaded. If you marry him, he'll pay for your education. Everybody wins. I'll arrange for you two to meet today. You can get married tomorrow. My nephew's great, just not very educated. He wants a highly educated wife to improve the family genes." Improve the genes? I stood there feeling like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. Grandma shot my aunt a vicious look, then gave a cold laugh and said, "Stop stirring up trouble. Her improve the genes? You'll end up making enemies before you ever make a match." That one word, her, hurt even worse than my aunt's talk about improving the genes. I said nothing and turned back to my room. A year later, Jobin wanted to study overseas. Good, a young man should go out and explore the world. See more, experience more. That's a real child of the Joe family. Studying abroad isn't cheap. I'll pay. I'll cover every penny for my grandson's education abroad. It's only $800,000 when? 800,000. A year earlier, she wouldn't even look up over my 30,000. Now she handed him 800,000 without blinking. I stood behind the half-open door listening to laughter, thanks, and playful whining fill the living room. It sounded like New Year's Eve. I looked down at the photo of my grad school acceptance on my phone, smiled once, and said nothing. The year I graduated college, I found a job in the provincial capital. I'd prepared for 2 weeks and survived 3 rounds of interviews. The day I got the offer, I finally let out a long breath. All that work had been worth it. Back at my apartment, I set the offer letter on the table and stared at it for a long time. I took a picture to send Grandma, but my finger hovered over send for ages. In the end, I didn't send it. I thought my life was finally about to get better. Grandma's critically ill, come home now. I bought an overnight train ticket and spent 20 hours in a hard seat just to reach the hospital. The moment my uncle's family saw me, they gave me the spot beside Grandma's bed. Good, you're here. She's your responsibility now. They gave me a few instructions, said they had work, and left. They never came back before Grandma was discharged. That night I didn't dare close my eyes. Grandma lay in bed with tubes all over her body, breathing fast and shallow. I held her hand. The skin on the back was paper thin, blue veins standing out everywhere. Grandma woke up the next day. I thought I could finally leave and go back to work. I called my aunt and asked them to come take a turn at her bedside. They brushed me off, saying they'd come in a few days, but my job start date couldn't wait. After I called again and again, my aunt exploded and called me an ungrateful brat. Your grandma raised you all these years and this is how you repay her? If you don't stay and care for her, who will? My aunt said it like it was obvious, as if refusing would make me the worst granddaughter alive. I opened my mouth. I wanted to mention the job in the capital, the 3 interviews, the final start date printed on my offer, but nothing came out. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I called the company and calmly explained everything to HR. I'm sorry, I can't start the job right now. I sounded just as calm as when I'd once told my professor I couldn't attend grad school. Grandma said nothing. She didn't tell me to leave and she didn't thank me for staying. Life drifted on quietly like that. Then somehow 10 years passed. At least 3 times a week I visited Grandma to wash her, do laundry, clean, and take care of her feet. In winter the water was painfully cold. In summer I was soaked in sweat. My hands grew layer after layer of calluses, winter sores split open, and I worked through the pain. Nobody ever asked if I was tired. Nobody asked if I was busy. Grandma always said my uncle's family had important careers, while I lived nearby and had no future anyway, so of course I should come more often. Nearby meant 50 minutes on the subway, 30 by bus, and an hour and a half each way. Apparently that counted as nearby. Jobin said he wanted to be close enough to care for Grandma anytime, so after she left the hospital, she transferred him a 200 square meter apartment next door. It was 5 minutes away. I could only tell myself he was busy. For 10 years, my uncle's family visited exactly 4 times a year. Lunar New Year, Qingming, Mid-Autumn Festival, and Grandma's birthday. If they came any other time, it was always because they needed money. They'd pull their luxury car up to the building, blast the horn, and carry in 1 carton of milk from the trunk. On the way inside, they'd tell every neighbor they were visiting Grandma, and everyone would praise her son and grandson for being so devoted. Grandma, we're back to see you. Where's my red envelope? Grandma would smile and hand it over. I'd spent 10 years beside her, and I could count on one hand how many times she'd smiled at me. But with Jobin, she smiled every single time. He'd sprawl on the couch, cross his legs, and play on his phone, while Grandma sat beside him feeding him fruit. She was happy just watching him scroll. Sometimes he'd glance up and she'd immediately ask if he was thirsty and offer water. If he said no, she'd just smile at him. Once in a while, they'd help. Jobin would hand Grandma a glass of water while my aunt stood nearby taking pictures on her phone. She'd post it online with, "Jobin brought Grandma water. Such a devoted grandson." The photo would get dozens of likes. Me? I bathed Grandma, cleaned up after her, and got up 4 or 5 times a night to help her use the bathroom. 10 years. More than 3,600 days. Nobody took my picture. Nobody gave me likes. Nobody called me devoted. For those 10 years, Grandma said almost the same things to me every day. "Zhou Xiaoya, I don't need you. Go away. You aren't thoughtful at all." Thoughtful? My uncle came 4 times a year with 1 carton of milk. I traveled 3 hours a day over 700 round trips in 10 years, more than 2,500 hours on the road. Jobin called twice a year, 5 minutes each time. I sat beside Grandma every day, feeding her, bathing her, and changing her dressings. The last time my aunt massaged Grandma's shoulders, she did it for 3 minutes and took 10 pictures. I massaged Grandma at least an hour every day. Over 10 years, that's more than 3,000 hours. Not one photo exists. I rolled the word thoughtful around in my mind, turned back to the kitchen and kept simmering her medicine. Flames licked the clay pot as the medicine bubbled. Steam filled the kitchen and blurred my eyes, too. I raised a hand and wiped them. People called me stupid and asked why I never fought back. But fight for what? I was a girl. In this family, that meant I was an outsider from birth. I ate her food, lived in her home, depended on her. I felt I'd never repay that debt. As darkness fell, I left the lights off and sat beside the bed in the pale moonlight, slowly taking Grandma's old clothes from the closet and folding them one by one. My uncle wasn't worried I'd take anything else. First, anything valuable Grandma owned had already been picked clean. Second, my uncle was busy transferring the factory, my aunt was calculating its profits, and Joe Bin was planning his wedding and remodeling the villa. None of them cared about these little things. I sat in that room until the sky outside went from gray-blue to pitch black. The battered old wardrobe looked completely out of place in Grandma's otherwise elegant room. Grandma cared deeply about appearances. She once kept all her clothes in a fine rosewood chest. My aunt later took the chest and threw the old qipaos inside it into the trash. When Grandma saw, she yanked the qipaos back, clutched them to her chest, and tore into my aunt until she was humiliated. They're ancient junk. Why keep them and waste such a beautiful rosewood chest? Only later did I learn those qipaos had been part of Grandma's dowry from her mother. I opened the closet and looked at the 20 qipaos. Plain during the day, they became strangely beautiful under moonlight. I stared for a long time, then started cleaning the room. I'd replaced the curtains 5 years earlier because Grandma said the old ones looked like a hospital. I visited 7 fabric stores to find this subtle pattern. When I hung them, she looked once and said, "Not bad." Those 2 words were the best praise she gave me in 10 years. I took the curtains down, folded them, and tossed them into a trash bag. The desk calendar on her nightstand was still open to the 15th. A red circle marked the date, and beside it in shaky handwriting were 2 characters, Xiaoya. After Grandma got sick, her eyesight faded. Her writing jumped from large to small and strokes overlapped. I stared at my name for a long time, then closed the calendar and put it in my bag. By 4 in the morning, I'd packed everything. 2 suitcases and 1 woven sack. That was every trace I'd left in this house after 10 years. I looked around at the villa I'd known so well. In a few days, all of it would be gone. Joe Bin planned to turn it into his marital home. Renovations started in 7 days. They'd tear everything out, replace all the furniture, and throw away whatever Grandma had left behind. These 20 qipaos were the last pieces of her left in this world. Dawn was close when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but after a few seconds, I answered. "Hello?" A familiar voice answered from the other end. I knew that voice. It was Zhang Ming, the lawyer who had read Grandma's will that morning. He seemed to have been waiting for this moment. As soon as he heard me, he let out a long breath like a weight had finally lifted. He explained nothing. He only said he'd come help me move and told me not to tell anyone. Then he paused and asked one question. "Did you bring all of the old lady's qipaos?" "Yes, I have them all." The second I answered, he hung up. I lowered my phone, still doubtful. Less than 20 minutes later, Zhang Ming arrived with a young man who looked like his assistant. I grabbed the bag to carry it downstairs, but my arm dropped under the weight. It felt far heavier than clothes should. I'd only packed Grandma's qipaos, yet I couldn't lift it with one hand. I looked at Zhang Ming. He said nothing, just nodded slightly and motioned for his assistant to take the bag. No one spoke. Only after the doors shut and we drove out of the neighborhood did Zhang Ming sink into his seat like he'd finally put down a huge burden. He pulled a brown document envelope from his briefcase and handed it to me. "I know you have a lot of questions. Everything you need is in this envelope." I took it confused as Zhang Ming continued. "Before she died, your grandmother was very clear. No one but you could have those qipaos. Even if they ended up in a landfill, they were never to go to the Zhou family." I opened the envelope. Inside were 2 things, a diary and a rental agreement. The diary had a dark red leather cover, worn pale at the corners. It had clearly been opened many times. The lease was printed and officially stamped. My name appeared in the tenant's box. Outside the window, the lakefront villa where Grandma had lived most of her life grew smaller in the rearview mirror. We left the city, drove beneath a canopy of plane trees, and finally stopped outside a suburban villa. It was a small 2-story house with a little yard. Vines covered the wall, their leaves rustling whenever the wind blew. The engine shut off. Zhang Ming turned and looked at me. "Your grandmother leased this villa 3 years ago in your name for 50 years. During that time, only you may use it. It can't be sublet, loaned, mortgaged, inherited, or divided as property. No one can take it from you." I couldn't speak. My throat felt blocked. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. After Zhang Ming and his assistant carried everything inside, they left. I stood alone in the huge, empty living room, surrounded by silence and the sound of my own breathing. I took Grandma's qipaos from the bag one by one, spread them across the couch, and sat down on the rug. Looking at the qipaos, the diary, and the lease, I suddenly felt a kind of courage I hadn't known in years. It rose into my throat and demanded that I finally ask, why? Why rent me a house? Why leave a diary? Why give me nothing but qipaos? Slowly, I opened the diary to the first page. Jiangming had said every answer I wanted was inside the diary. The first page was in Grandma's handwriting. Her penmanship was beautiful, every stroke pressed firmly into the paper as if she feared her words might not be clear enough. January 1st, 2005. New Year's Eve. Xiaoya got a perfect score today. I'm so proud, but all I could do was scold her with a cold face. I owe that child too much. May 26, 2005. Xiaoya is far too sensible for her age. Who will protect her when I'm gone? She loves my qipaos, so I'll hide all my jewelry inside the ones she loves. No one will ever be able to take it from her. March 15, 2008. Xiaoya said she wants to go to grad school. She stood in front of me speaking softly, her eyes shining. I pretended not to hear. It's not that I don't want her to study. I'm too old and she has no experience of the world. If I die one day, what will happen to her? She needs to stand on her own sooner, so I can leave without fear. Her aunt and uncle watch her like predators, hoping to marry her off for a good price. A woman already has a hard road and Xiaoya has no one. Xiaoya, Grandma is sorry. Take this money as the compensation I owe you. My fingers froze on the page and I instinctively looked toward the qipaos beside me. I jumped up, pulled out a deep blue qipao and held it beneath the light. Sure enough, a lifelike peony appeared in the fabric. Panicked, I grabbed the diary and kept reading. July 20th, 2012. Zhou Bin left to study abroad. I gave him 800,000 yuan. That same day, I began embroidering hidden patterns into Xiaoya's qipaos with 200 grams of gold thread, sewing in more than a dozen kinds of gemstones I've collected over the years. Xiaoya watches her cousin study overseas and travel, yet never cries, complains, or asks for anything. That child never fights for herself, so I will fight for her. September 3rd, 2013. Zhou Bin brought his girlfriend home, and I gave her a 3,000 yuan welcome gift. Xiaoya, in faded jeans, ran around serving them tea. That same day, I hid my finest auction-grade jade in a qipao. I may not live to see her wedding, so these dresses will be her security when that day comes. My hand began to shake as I turned the page. I bit my lip hard, fighting back tears. September 8th, 2014. I got sick. Zhou Bin came demanding the house, terrified I'd die before giving it to him. I agreed. That night, I called lawyer Zhang and rented a villa for Xiaoya. I checked everything. A rented home can't be taken from her. The lease is 50 years. Xiaoya can live there in peace, and no one can throw her out. Tears splashed onto the page and blurred the ink. I hurried to wipe them away, then hugged the diary tightly to my chest and broke down crying. If Grandma had bought me a house, my uncle's family would have found out and fought until they took it. But a rental wouldn't appear in the inheritance. It couldn't be divided, inherited, or transferred. For 50 years, only I could live there. April 3rd, 2015. I was critically ill and unconscious. Xiaoya gave up a job in the big city to come care for me. Zhou Bin never came once. I wasn't protecting them when I said they were successful and didn't need to visit, while Xiaoya had no future and should come more. During my hospital stay, I finished my will. Every qipao goes to Xiaoya. I have to plan her future carefully. So Grandma had kept them away because she didn't want them seeing her arrange the will. I kept reading. The handwriting grew shakier and messier, and some pages were stained where water had blurred the ink. August 2015. I scolded her again today. Told her she wasn't thoughtful. Said Zhou Bin was better. Tried to make her leave. She stayed. I need to hurry while I still can, sewing more jewels into the qipaos so Xiaoya has more protection. February 2016. Scolded her twice today. Tonight I used 200 grams of gold thread to make more than a dozen knotted buttons. May 2017. I saw the winter sores on her hands and didn't dare ask about them. I decorated the qipaos with 2,001 carat diamonds. November 2018. Zhou Bin visited with a carton of milk. I smiled at him. Xiaoya was in the kitchen making my medicine. I didn't smile at her. That night, I sewed 100 South Sea pearls onto the qipaos. I reached the last page. One final sentence was written inside the back cover. These qipaos look ordinary in daylight. Only in the darkness of night do they reveal their true light. My heart filled with emotion and curiosity. I switched off the lights. Instantly, a phoenix embroidered entirely in gold thread seemed to rise from the fabric, spreading its wings like it was flying out of the flames. On the royal blue qipao, all 12 knotted buttons lit up one by one, glowing in the dim room like brilliant pigeon blood rubies. The moon-white qipao flashed with fire along its gold trim. What looked like tiny decorations were actually hundreds of diamonds. All 20 qipaos lay across the living room, everyone sparkling, gold thread, silver thread, jade, pearls, gemstones, and pave diamonds. Rubies burned like sunset, sapphires pooled like a dark sea, emeralds looked almost liquid, and golden pearls seemed to float. The entire room glittered with treasure. Ruby red, sapphire blue, emerald green, golden pearls, white diamonds, jade, rainbow tourmaline. Their colors flooded the entire living room. Gemstone reflections covered the walls, ceiling, and floor, as if someone had overturned an entire jewelry vault. I stared at Grandma's qipaos and finally broke into uncontrollable sobs. Every time Grandma scolded me, she sewed another piece of jewelry into a qipao, year after year, recording every single one. Kneeling on the floor before those 20 heavy qipaos, I finally understood how enormous the love she'd hidden in silence for decades really was. In front of everyone, she'd humiliated me and acted like I deserved nothing. No seat at New Year's dinner, no tuition, not even permission to attend grad school. She handed houses, factories, gold jewelry, and tuition money to Jobin and my uncle with a willing smile. Then, night after night, stitch by stitch, she sewed all her guilt and love for me into the shabby qipaos no one cared about. To the whole world, she played the grandmother who valued boys and dismissed girls. She carried that ugly reputation for life while secretly planning my future where no one could see. I pictured my uncle's smug face as he signed for the factory at the law office. Shu Bin had looked completely entitled when he got the lakefront villa. My aunt's face had been pure greed as she stroked the white jade Guanyin. They'd fought desperately for what looked most valuable, never realizing Grandma wanted them to take those things. The old qipaos they tossed aside were her true inheritance. I sat frozen on the floor, staring at the mountain of treasure Grandma had left me, crying and laughing. I cried because I'd understood so late, and laughed because I'd never truly been alone or unloved. After a sleepless night, I picked up my phone with swollen eyes and searched for the most reputable jewelry appraisers and auction houses in the provincial capital. Dexon Auction House was one of the city's oldest firms, founded in the late 1800s and known for antiques, jewelry, and fine art. Its reputation was excellent. I called for an appointment. When the young receptionist heard I had old qipaos to appraise, she sounded completely unimpressed and routinely booked me a time slot. The next day, I took the dark green qipao to Dexon. A woman in her 30s greeted me, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a practiced professional smile. I took the qipao from its cloth bag and spread it on the table. Under fluorescent lights, the dark green satin looked ordinary. The gold thread seemed dull, and the jade had little shine. The woman glanced at it with an exactly what I expected look, casually rubbed the fabric between her fingers, and barely bothered lowering her head for a closer look. For an old qipao, it's been kept fairly well, but these are everywhere, nothing rare. We could make you an offer, but 5,000 yuan would be the absolute ceiling. I didn't answer. I stood, walked to the window, and pulled the curtains shut. The room fell dark. I switched on a flashlight. Under its beam, the gold thread phoenix spread across the green satin, every feather sharply visible as if rising from the cloth. The jade at the collar turned a deep, translucent green, like water with no bottom. Tiny diamonds and rubies along the gold trim woke one by one under the light, flickering like stars in darkness. The qipao lay silently on the table, glowing. The woman's smile froze. She stared at the gold phoenix for a full 10 seconds, lips parted, unable to speak. Her hand hovered over the dress, wanting to touch it, but afraid to. Her fingertips trembled. "Ms. Zhou, please wait here, I'll get Mr. Chen." 5 minutes later, a man in his 60s came downstairs. He wore a dark gray traditional jacket, had silver hair and reading glasses, and walked with a cane. The moment he saw the qipao, he stopped mid-step. "I'm Chen Dian, owner of Dexon Auction House." He shook my hand, put on gloves, and lifted the qipao with extraordinary care. Under a bright light, he studied the path of every gold thread, each phoenix feather, and every gemstone facet, lingering over every detail. He flipped it over to inspect the lining, the stitches, and how every gemstone had been mounted from the back. Then he laid it flat, pulled a small magnifier from his pocket, and traced the embroidery line by line. The room was so quiet I could hear him occasionally adjust his breathing. After a long time, he straightened up and removed his glasses. "Yes, this is the one." He looked at me with a gentle smile. "Ms. Zhou, where did you get this qipao?" "My grandmother left it to me." "Was your grandmother Shen Yuzhen?" Chen Dayan's hand jerked. His smile vanished, and he seemed to age several years at once. He slowly exhaled, looked up at me, and his eyes turned red. "We're both old now. I suppose it's time. You're Yuzhen's granddaughter, Xiaoya, aren't you?" I nodded, then asked, "You knew my grandmother?" Chen Dayan gave me a long look and smiled. "Knew her? Your grandmother came from one of the richest families in the provincial capital. Your great-grandfather was in the silk business, with more than 100 looms. Half the neighborhood depended on the Shen family for work." He walked back to the window. Sunlight fell across his silver hair, and his voice slowed. "When your grandmother married, the Shen family hired their finest embroiderers, used the best silk and countless precious materials, and made 36 qipaos for her." I stared at him, stunned, and asked, "What happened after that?" Chen Dayan turned back and gave a faint smile. "She married into the Zhou family. Your grandfather died young, so she raised 2 sons alone. She sold some qipaos to pay for their schooling, weddings, and lives. She refused to sell the final 20. But 6 months ago, she suddenly came to me and said she wanted them sold." My tears fell onto the dark green qipao, leaving a tiny wet circle on the fabric. Chen Dayan handed me a tissue. She left photos and appraisal reports for all 20 qipaos with me. She said if anyone but you brought them here, I should call the police. If you brought them, I was to give you this letter. The envelope said, "For Xiaoya only." I tore it open. It was Grandma's handwriting. After she got sick, she could barely see, so the letters wandered from large to small across the page. "Xiaoya, my sweet granddaughter, you're a smart girl. If you're reading this, you've probably discovered the secret of the Chipaos. You've had such a hard life. You lost your parents young and had only Grandma. I wanted to treat you well, but I couldn't. I knew what your aunt and uncle were like. If I'd favored you, they'd have targeted you. I was too old to protect you, so I had to hurt you instead. These Chipaos are yours. My will and notarized papers are with lawyer Jiang. The Southside factory now sits inside an environmental protection zone and must be upgraded, likely costing 8 million yuan. The Lakefront Villas Foundation is sinking, and the government has declared it unsafe. Relocation could cost another 500,000. Remember these facts. When the time comes, don't go soft. Don't hold on to the Chipaos. Sell them quickly and turn them into cash. Don't feel bad about it. You can't safely guard those things forever. Never become a slave to money. Money should give you options, not become a mountain crushing you. You're a woman, and this world will make your road harder than a man's. You have no one behind you, and no easy path ahead. Grandma can't stay with you forever, but these Chipaos can keep you secure for the rest of your life. Xiaoya, remember every wrong you suffered growing up. Don't blindly trust blood relatives. Once people become greedy, they can be crueler than wolves. Protect yourself, your dignity, and always leave yourself a way out. Say nothing. Reveal nothing. From now on, live well on your own. Don't blame Grandma, and don't hate your aunt and uncle. Keep your heart open to a much bigger world than them, Xiaoya. All your life, you've swallowed every unfair thing without fighting. If you won't fight for yourself, Grandma will fight for you. At the bottom, she had signed, your unworthy grandmother, Shen Yuzhen. I gripped the letter as tears poured out. Grandma had planned everything. Shabby Chipaos my relatives would ignore, and only a diary and lease for the lawyer so no one could kill for the secret. She'd used their greed against them to win the most for me. After I stopped shaking, Mr. Chen handed me hot tea and asked about the Chipaos. Do you want to keep them or sell them? I wiped away my tears. Sell them, Grandma told me to. Mr. Chen watched me silently. I held the teacup between my palms. The ceramic burned my fingertips, but I didn't let go. Grandma knew I couldn't protect things this valuable by myself. She didn't leave me these Chipaos to worship like relics. She left them so I'd never be trapped with nowhere to turn. I won't waste what she did for me. I've known your grandmother for decades. I won't let anyone cheat you. For the next month, I barely slept through a single night. Mr. Chen used every connection he'd built over a lifetime in antiques and auctions, quietly contacting world-class jewelry experts and private collectors who never appeared in public. All 20 Chipaos received top-level authentication. Whenever an expert removed one from the safe, they wore fresh white gloves and even seemed to breathe more carefully. The day the final results came in, Mr. Chen called me himself. Uncle Chen called me himself. Xiaoya, every Chipao your grandma left you was made with a lost gold thread Kesi weaving technique. They were already priceless before the jewelry. Those 20 dresses alone were worth 100 million yuan. And then your grandma added hidden gold thread patterns, gold embroidery, and rows of gold frog buttons. I brought in 35 appraisers. It took us half a month just to count every gemstone on every dress. Across the 20 Chipao, your grandma added 300 ice-grade jadeites, 100 top-grade purple jadeites, and 1-carat diamonds across every hidden pattern, 38,000 diamonds total, plus 180 pigeon blood rubies and 700 South Sea pearls. I cut Uncle Chen off. My voice was calmer than I expected. Uncle Chen, just tell me, how much could all these Chipao sell for? The other end went silent for a few seconds. Conservatively, no less than 330 million yuan. My hand started shaking around the phone. That number, over 300 million, hit me like a truck. Grandma had hung those priceless Chipao one by one in an old wardrobe. Shut the doors, and they looked like nothing but outdated junk taking up space. My aunt had rummaged through them before and tossed them aside in disgust. Why keep this old junk? Grandma clutched the Chipao to her chest. She never dared reveal the truth. Gold thread, gems, jade, pearls. All of it slept quietly in the darkness of that wardrobe. She let the whole family think she was biased, mean, and stingy. She let them count money in the living room, brag at dinner, fight over property in front of her, and come asking for tuition and cash gifts. She would just smile at them and say nothing. Because she knew better than anyone that while she was alive, she could still stand in front of me and take every storm for her little granddaughter. But after she died, the moment any wealth showed, those ungrateful wolves would come running like they smelled blood. They would tear through every corner of the lakeside villa, yank the Chipao from the wardrobe, turn on each other over gold and gems, and rip apart everything Grandma had treasured her whole life. So she waited. Until I grew up. Until I was no longer that terrified girl crouching in the kitchen, too scared to say a word. Until life toughened me enough to handle trouble and people. Then quietly, she placed the weight of her whole life into my hands. Uncle Chen, sell them all. After I hung up, I sat in the villa living room as moonlight poured through the windows and into my walk-in closet. That was the second thing I did. I hired one of the best Qipao tailors in the country and used top-grade silk and brocade to recreate all 20 dresses stitch for stitch. The old tailor looked at me when he took the job and asked nothing. He had made Qipao his whole life. He knew some clothes are made to be worn, and some are made to be seen. Under ordinary lighting, the replicas just looked like well-made clothes. Nothing more. The satin shone, the embroidery was delicate, and every frog button sat perfectly in place. But that was all. I stood and looked out the window. From now on, I would live well and honor Grandma's wishes and the love she had hidden for 15 years. My week was quiet. My uncle's family was anything but. The Lakeside Villa transfer was complete, and the factory ownership paperwork had been changed. My aunt posted a video in the family group chat of my uncle signing a contract. Old Joe landed another 10 million yuan deal. Mom must be watching over us. We'll live well off this factory from now on and never waste what she left us. Grandma loved me most. She'll bless us for sure. We won't let her down. No one mentioned me, as if Grandma's granddaughter had never existed. Mom left Xiaoya 20 old Qipao. We don't really know what she meant. She was getting old, maybe she was a little... I left the group chat. I knew how Grandma had loved me. I didn't need to argue with them about it. A moment later, my uncle called. Xiaoya, you know what's going on with the family. We've never treated you badly. Your grandma's will is in black and white, and you signed it too. So why are you throwing a fit? Leaving the group in front of all those relatives? Were you trying to embarrass us? Uncle, I'm not upset. I just wanted to leave the chat. If that's all, I need to work. I'll talk to you later. I hung up before he could answer. Then I called attorney Jiang Ming. Mr. Jiang, I need your help with a few things. First, I want confirmation that the Qipao Grandma left me are legally 100% mine. Yes, I'll prepare a full legal opinion for you. Second, do my uncle and his family know the Lakeside Villa has a sinking foundation and was declared unsafe by the government? Probably not. Your grandmother's will didn't mention it. The line went quiet for a few seconds. Mrs. Zhou, did you already know your uncle would come after you? Grandma knew. The Lakeside Villa and factory she left them both have problems. But if they had behaved and left me alone, those problems wouldn't have mattered. Understood. I'll prepare everything in advance. After hanging up, I looked at Grandma's portrait. She wore the same calm expression. I smiled and asked if even today had gone exactly as she'd expected. Grandma's picture stared back at me, cool and unreadable. Don't worry, Grandma. I won't let them take what you left me. I won't let your life's work go to waste. I'll protect it, live well, and honor the love you hid for 20 years. 6 months later, all 20 Qipao sold to 3 elite collectors and 2 museums for a total of 173 million yuan. I glanced at the money that had arrived, turned off the screen, and set my phone face down. Grandma had written one line in her will. Never become money's slave. Money should protect you, not become the mountain that crushes you. She had lived that lesson her whole life. I had to remember it, or all her planning for me would mean nothing. After that, I kept to myself, quiet as an animal lying low, tucked away in the villa Grandma had rented for me. I trimmed roses, read Grandma's diaries, studied for graduate school at a top university, and waited for the next storm. It came sooner than I expected. 3 months later, on a bright weekend afternoon, the roses were in full bloom. I wore gardening gloves and clipped dead leaves from the branches one by one. A car screeched to a stop outside the villa, the brakes so sharp they sent sparrows flying from the wall. I set down the shears, took off my gloves, and wiped the dirt from my hands. Then someone started pounding on the iron gate. I walked over and calmly opened it. Zhu Bin rushed in first, his eyes scanning every corner of the yard like radar. Zhou Xiaoya, where did you get the money to live somewhere like this? I looked at him and smiled. Cousin? You make it sound like living here is a crime. Xiaoya, our family has a respectable name. You haven't been doing something shameful for money, have you? I stepped aside and let them in. Leather sofas, marble floors, a crystal chandelier under the high ceiling, and afternoon sunlight pouring through the windows turned the floor gold. The second my aunt stepped onto the marble, even her footsteps softened. Zhou Bin stood in the middle of the living room, turning in circles. He tried to hide it, but jealousy was written all over his face. My uncle cleared his throat, sat on the sofa, leaned back like the family elder, and crossed his legs. Xiaoya, we're only worried about you. You're a young woman just starting out. Don't let someone take advantage of you. You're worrying for nothing, Uncle. I raised my eyes and slowly studied all 3 faces. My uncle's anxiety, my aunt's jealousy, Zhou Bin's anger. It felt like flipping through a 20-year ledger of old grudges. This house belongs to my boyfriend. Boyfriend? Since when do you have a boyfriend? Why didn't I know? I leaned back, lifted my teacup, and blew across the steam. The white porcelain touched my lip as the tea haze blurred half my face. Uncle, I don't think I'm required to report my private life to you. My voice stayed low and slow, like I was discussing something completely unimportant. My uncle's lips moved, but nothing came out. Besides, Grandma had barely been buried before you threw me out. Is it really wrong for me to date someone and find a little support? Nice story. Sounds more like you're some married man's side piece. You've humiliated this whole family. Enough. Stop wasting time on that. Zhou Bin waved impatiently, looking down at me with open contempt. Don't try to fool us with some fake boyfriend. Where are the Chipao Grandma left you? Did you sell them? There it was. I laughed coldly inside. From the second they entered the villa, I'd known exactly why they came. I put confusion into my voice. They're here with me? Why? According to the will, Grandma left the Chipao to me, didn't she? Jobin's eyes lit up. He leaned forward, trying to hide his urgency. Xiaoya, those Chipao were Grandma's wedding dowry. That makes them different. Give them back to me. So they'd heard something. They knew the Chipao were valuable now. Give them back to you? If I remember correctly, the will clearly says I inherit them. Jobin and my uncle exchanged looks. They realized I wasn't going to hand anything over easily. You inherit them? You don't deserve a single thing from Grandma. Hand over the Chipao right now. Everything she owned belongs to me. I turned those words over in my head. In his mind, Grandma worshipped him, spending 800,000 yuan on his schooling, car, and home. In my mind, she had been the cruel, sun-favoring grandmother I served for 10 years, only to receive 20 worthless old Chipao while never measuring up to her grandson. The moment Jobin finished, my aunt started searching the villa at top speed. I stood and looked at my uncle's family, barely able to hide their impatience. Fine, follow me. They exchanged smug looks, delighted that they thought I'd gone weak again. I led them upstairs to the walk-in closet. When I opened the door, bright, even light poured from the ceiling, leaving no shadows anywhere. 20 Chipao in different colors hung neatly from rosewood hangers. No glowing gold thread phoenixes, no dazzling jade, just beautifully made old-fashioned dresses. Elegant and respectable, but not remotely breathtaking. Jubin yanked down a royal blue Chipao. A frog button snapped, and a bead rolled under the cabinet, but he didn't notice. He held the dress under the light and squinted at its stones. My uncle grabbed a dusty rose Chipao, turning it over and twisting each pearl around the hem with his fingernails. They didn't care about Grandma, only her property. But what they saw wasn't treasure. It was just a row of perfectly ordinary Chipao. Once they realized the dresses looked ordinary, they spun around and glared at me. My uncle held up his phone. On screen was a dark green satin Chipao with a gold phoenix. Under museum lights, the jade at its collar glowed an almost unreal green. It was the Provincial Museum website, stamped Newly Acquired Treasure. This was added to the Provincial Museum last month. It's worth 10 million yuan, and it's identical to the one in your grandma's closet. You sold the real one, didn't you? They stared at my face, hunting for a crack. I looked at my uncle and couldn't help laughing. My aunt snapped. She stepped out from behind him and pointed a finger almost into my face. What are you laughing at? Don't deny it. The museum one is identical to Grandma's. There were 20 Chipao, and you plan to keep all the money for yourself. When she said keep it all, spit flew from her mouth. The greed in her eyes twisted her face into something ugly. Jobin realized the dress in his hands was ordinary fabric and slammed it down. Its decorations struck the marble with a harsh clatter. How else does a woman in her 30s afford a villa, leather sofas, and a rose garden? You sold Grandma's Chipao? No wonder you served her for 10 years and didn't complain about getting only a few old dresses. You knew they were worth a fortune. I waited until they finished before speaking. Uncle, aunt, cousin, you stormed into my home because you think that museum Chipao has something to do with me? Quit pretending. It's identical to the old lady's. What are the odds? She fought us whenever we tried to throw those rags away. So they were treasure all along. My uncle stepped forward and stared at me sternly. Xiaoya, don't be stupid. One Chipao is worth 10 million yuan and there are 20. That's at least 100 million. You can't keep it all. Hand them over so we can inherit them together or we'll sue. You're a granddaughter taking everything ahead of the elders. That's illegal. Exactly. Grandma loved Jobin most. Those Chipao had to be for him. You took advantage of her confusion, hid them, changed the will, and stole them, didn't you? Stole? I repeated softly. Uncle, I'm Grandma's granddaughter too, and my father was her son. Why is my inheritance stealing? You saw one similar Chipao in the news, decided hers must be priceless, and came here making a scene. As she ranted, my aunt dragged every Chipao onto the floor and stomped on them viciously. Don't change the subject. The museum Chipao was Grandma's. These are fake. You sold the real ones. You sold them. Don't try to fool us. Jobin pulled a document from his briefcase and threw it in front of me. If you're smart, hand over the money and we'll divide it as a family. If not, we'll see you in court. I gave a short laugh and nodded. Sure, see you in court. They finally realized I wasn't the easy target I used to be. My uncle's chest heaved while Jobin glared daggers at me. We'll see who wins. Jobin threw out that threat and led them away. The villa went silent. I looked at the wrecked closet. Blue, dusty rose and ivory Chipao lay like crushed flowers, beads scattered across the floor. I lifted the dark green one. Its broken collar still held a few dangling pearls. One touch sent more beads rolling away. Enough. I folded each Chipao. I never should have expected tenderness from them toward Grandma's belongings. If they wanted no restraint, I didn't need to protect the illusion anymore. The world would know how Grandma loved me. 3 days later, court opened. My uncle's family sat at the plaintiff's table dressed like a wedding party. Tie, stacks of gold jewelry, slicked back hair. Their lawyer, a man in his 40s with gold-rimmed glasses and a stuffed briefcase, stood with the confidence of someone certain he'd won. Your Honor, the facts are clear. During estate division, defendant Zhou Xiaoya concealed the true value of 20 antique qipao left by Shen Yuzhen and sold them without authorization, unlawfully depriving the heirs. We ask the court to order their return, impose all legal costs on the defendant, and award damages for the harm caused. My aunt nodded furiously at the plaintiff's table, her gold bracelets clinking together. Does the defendant wish to respond? Yes. I removed the original will from my folder and handed it to the judge with both hands. This is Shen Yuzhen's will. It clearly states that I inherit all the qipao. 2 identical originals exist, one with me and one with witness attorney Zhang Ming. The plaintiff signed acknowledging it. The judge accepted the will and read it carefully. We don't accept it. My uncle clenched his jaw and glared at me. Judge, they tricked us into signing. We didn't know those qipao were worth that much. They must have learned the value before Mom died and conspired to alter the will. My aunt jumped up immediately, desperate to add more. Your Honor, the defendant cared for my mother-in-law in her final years. She must have known the qipao were valuable and secretly worked with the lawyer to change the will. We can also prove my mother-in-law disliked her and never would have left her something so valuable. Their lawyer calmly stood and handed another document to the judge. Your Honor, these statements come from the defendant's neighbors, relatives, friends, and even former professors. They show Shen Yuzhen strongly disliked the defendant. We therefore believe the qipao provision was altered by the defendant to seize the estate, and we ask that possible criminal liability be investigated. I couldn't help laughing. For those qipao, my uncle's family would truly say anything. Zhang Ming suddenly stood from the gallery. I witnessed and safeguarded Shen Yuzhen's will. She wrote it by hand, signed it, and placed her fingerprint on it herself. 2 witnesses were present, and the entire signing was recorded on audio and video. As he spoke, he pulled a file from his briefcase and set it on the table. Zhou Bin immediately shouted back, Your Honor, I challenge the authenticity. Grandma adored me. Why would she leave anything to this? My aunt finished the insult he hadn't. This fatherless, motherless nobody. My mother-in-law never gave her even 100 yen. She wouldn't pay 30,000 for graduate school but spent 800,000 sending my son abroad. Why would she leave priceless qipao to her? Order, defendant, do you have anything to say? I calmly looked at my aunt and uncle. I felt no anger. 20 years of hurt no longer wounded me. It only proved how far ahead Grandma had seen. Your Honor, I forged nothing. My aunt raised an eyebrow, her face full of contempt. Your parents died, and now your grandma's gone too. You lived off this family, we put you through college, and now you forge papers to steal our property. You're nothing but an ungrateful parasite. Do you actually know Grandma at all? You say the will is fake, so let me show you something. I took a document envelope from my bag and laid the papers on the table one by one. These are Grandma's 20 qipao appraisals. Each lists color, fabric, technique, and gems. Dark green with gold phoenix, 2 top-grade jadeites, 120 rubies, 500 grams gold thread, royal blue with silver peonies, 12 imperial green jadeites, 2,000 diamonds, 30 pigeon blood rubies, dusty rose with pearl lotus, 36 South Sea pearls. I read every appraisal aloud. Each of the 20 sheets ended with the appraiser's official seal and Grandma's name, Shen Yuzhen, written carefully, stroke by stroke. I gently touched her name. These appraisals are dated 2021. Her lawyer can confirm she was fully lucid then. Uncle, aunt, cousin, I lied about nothing. Grandma hid this from you and left the qipao to me, an estate worth 330 million yuan. Then I placed the rental contract on the table. Bay number 1 villa, annual rent $300,000 yuan. Term 50 years, 13 million paid up front. Tenant, Zhou Xiaoya. Grandma rented it for me when she became ill. Only I can live here. You can't live in it, rent it, sell it, or divide it. No one can take it for 50 years. I smiled at their bloodless faces. The room fell silent. My uncle braced both hands on the table, knuckles white, mouth hanging open. I raised Grandma's diary and looked him straight in the eye. The factory, lakeside villa, and jade statue you inherited are worth about 12 million yuan combined. He said nothing, his face dark with fury. The qipao Grandma left me were worth 330 million. Your 12 million was what she wanted you to see. My qipao were what she never wanted you to see. Impossible! How could your grandma have that much money? He couldn't accept that the inheritance he'd fought over his whole life was just scraps Grandma deliberately left in plain sight, while the orphan girl they looked down on received unimaginable wealth and her true love. Attorney Zhang Ming spoke at exactly the right moment, firm and precise. Your Honor, all investment and financial returns earned by Shen Yuzhen over the years are supported by complete bank records and notarized documents. They are authentic and available for verification. He handed the documents to the judge. My uncle shot to his feet, knocking his chair backward with a crash. I don't believe it! Where could your grandma have gotten that much money? Didn't she say she was broke years ago? I looked at him and spoke softly. She told you she was broke, and you left her in the hospital without even checking on her. My uncle's lips twitched. She said I wasn't caring enough and couldn't compare to Zhou Bin. You believe that too. I stood and faced him directly. Uncle, you lived with Grandma for 55 years and believed every word she said. I lived with her for 21 and didn't. But I never questioned her, and I never schemed for her money. The color drained from his face. I pulled 2 more documents from my folder and placed them on the table. Did you know the factory in the South District now falls inside a new environmental protection zone? I slid the first document toward him. Did you know Jobin's lakeside villa is officially unsafe, and relocation requires another 500,000 yen? My uncle stared at me, trembling, his lips opening and closing. Impossible. Uncle, Grandma left you only those things because she knew they were all you could see, and all you cared about. He stumbled back into the table, swayed, and said nothing. I turned to the bench and presented Grandma's diary with both hands. Your Honor, this is Shen Yuzhen's handwritten diary from the last 10 years. It records her true intentions and property plans before and after the will. The handwriting matches the will and supports its authenticity. The qipao were voluntarily left to me. There was no deception. The judge took the diary and turned the pages, the paper rustling through the quiet room. My aunt suddenly sprang up, eyes wide, pointing at me with a shaking finger. You are not keeping all 20 qipao. They should be divided among all of us. Why do you get everything? Why do you get to keep it all? That's not fair. The judge struck the gavel hard. Plaintiffs, when the will was announced, did you sign voluntarily? We didn't know that qipao were worth that much. If we'd known, we never would have signed. The court has reviewed Shen Yuzhen's will, diary, financial records, and notarized evidence. The will is legally valid and reflects her true intent. The 20 qipao were her premarital dowry, not Zhou family property, and are inherited solely by granddaughter Zhou Xiaoya. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed, with costs borne by the plaintiffs. My uncle's family slammed the table in fury when they heard the ruling. We reject this. It's unfair. We'll appeal. This is rigged. Zhou Xiaoya bought off the judge. The judge gave them an irritated look, then struck the gavel again. You didn't call it unfair when you inherited the villa and factory. Now suddenly it's unfair? This young woman cared for the elderly lady for 10 years and received a few dresses. Where was your concern for fairness then? Court adjourned. My uncle stood frozen, full of regret and fear. They had hired a famous lawyer charging 10,000 yen an hour, lost the case, owed the fees themselves, and learned Grandma had left me far more than them. They couldn't believe the woman they thought adored them had outplayed them completely. My aunt collapsed onto the bench, pale and limp. One last thing. I took out Grandma's will and read from it in front of everyone. Never become money's slave. Money should protect you, not become the mountain that crushes you. I hope you remember that too. You think Grandma left me the qipao because I stole them from you? No, she never intended them for you. Without me, you would have thrown them out with her belongings because money owns you. I cared for her for 10 years and she never once praised me. But every time she scolded me, she added another jewel to those qipao. She knew they weren't just money, they were her love and her apology. I gathered the papers and put them back in my bag. Uncle, Grandma lived with you for 55 years. She taught me never to rely blindly on blood relatives. Once family turns cruel, they can be worse than wolves. I gave them one calm look, stood, and walked away. You think I beat you. Grandma knew from day one you'd never outsmart her. I left the courtroom. Behind me there was no shouting, no arguing, only dead silence. Later, I had attorney Zhang pursue them for damaging the qipao and lying about Grandma's expenses. Her pension was 7,000 yen a month, insurance covered much of her care, and I paid the nursing bills. 15 years of records showed about 1.4 million yen went straight to my uncle. They claimed to support her while pocketing her pension. Once those records came out, my aunt's reputation collapsed. Everyone who had praised my uncle for caring for Grandma went quiet. Some relatives privately apologized to me. I didn't reply. Seeing people clearly was enough. A year later, as I received my graduate school acceptance, new environmental rules shut my uncle's garment factory for excessive pollution. He had expanded production and taken big orders, so the closure caused missed deliveries and lawsuits. The court froze his car, home, and savings. Overnight, his hair seemed to turn white. Grandma spent 800,000 yuan sending Jobin to Australia. While partying there, he contracted HIV. A premarital exam revealed it to his fiancée, who immediately sought preventive treatment and tested negative. The ordeal devastated her. Her businessman father had approved the match because Jobin seemed like a successful overseas graduate. Instead, everything collapsed. Her furious father made one call and Jobin lost his job. Somehow his medical report spread through their social circle. Friends and co-workers avoided him. He changed his number and moved, but couldn't escape the whispers and stares. After one blow after another, my aunt smashed dishes at home and wailed non-stop. This is all your fault. Your greed brought every disaster down on us. Jobin came out of the bedroom, gaunt and barely recognizable. He crossed the living room, opened the window, and tried to throw himself out. My aunt screamed and dragged him back by the waist. He hit the coffee table and lay staring blankly at the ceiling, exhausted and empty. It's all my fault. His voice was barely audible. My aunt clung to him sobbing as shouting, curses, and crying filled the apartment and spilled into the hallway. Zhang Ming told me because a friend lived nearby. I felt calm. Grandma knew them too well. greedy, selfish, short-sighted, always chasing immediate profit. What she left them was a mirror of their choices. The Qipao taught me not to let success or hardship narrow my vision. She gave them the same lesson, but knew only I would understand it. Never become money's slave. Money should protect you, not become the mountain that crushes you. Sadly, my uncle's family would probably never understand that. Grandma's lakeside villa sat unsold for months. The factory decayed, with waist-high weeds at the gate. My aunt pawned and sold her gold jewelry. Rising gold prices helped, but Grandma's jade statue still found no buyer. Zhou Bin's condition worsened fast, and my uncle begged relatives and friends for loans. No one would lend him money. I'm struggling too. Then they hung up. Relatives told me all this because they thought I'd enjoy it. I held the phone and looked at the plane tree outside, its leaves already half yellow. Then I said, "Mr. Zhang, arrange a meeting about my uncle's lakeside villa. I want to buy it." "At what price?" "Market price, unsafe building price." He simply said okay and hung up. 3 days later, wearing a lake blue qipao with my hair neatly pinned, I met my uncle at Zhang Ming's law office. He had lost so much weight his suit hung off him. Most of his hair was white. He looked at me, awkwardly smoothed his hair, and something like nostalgia entered his eyes. "You look a lot like your grandma." I smiled but said nothing. I only pushed the purchase contract toward him. The villa appraises at 800,000 yuan, but the unsafe building relocation fee is 500,000. "I'll pay you 2 million. He stared at the number, gripping the table until his knuckles whitened. It was low for the villa, but to his family now, it was a fortune. "I'm not rescuing you. Grandma lived in that house her whole life. I don't want it demolished or ending up with strangers. That's the truth." He lowered his head and picked up the pen, his hand shaking so badly he needed 3 tries to finish his name. The crooked strokes looked like Grandma's writing after she got sick. I slid over a 2 million yuan check. When he took it, his fingers brushed mine, cold and bony. "Use this to pay your debts. Take what's left and get Zhou Bin treatment." He nodded slowly, as if a weight pressed on his neck. I stood, took the signed contract and paused at the door. I didn't turn around. There was no sound behind me. Grandma never wanted to hurt you. With the 2 million, my uncle quietly took his family south by train, carrying one woven sack of old clothes. He walked hunched in front. Zhou Bin followed in a mask and cap, thin as a stick. No taxi stopped, so they bargained with an unlicensed driver to reach the station. My aunt looked back once at the lakeside villa. They left, and the villa stood empty. On a bright autumn day, I returned to the neighborhood entrance. Everything looked the same. The security guard leaned halfway out of his booth when he saw me. His eyes lit up. "Long time no see, you're back!" "I'm back." I opened the villa door with the old familiar click. The living room was unchanged, just covered in a thin layer of dust and the stale smell of an empty house. Grandma's portrait still sat in her room, dusty but unchanged. Lips pressed together, eyes calm, looking at me exactly as she had when she was alive. I sat on the floor. Sunlight fell across my knees and Grandma's picture while dust drifted through the beam. One speck settled on the glass frame, and I reached out to wipe it away. "Grandma, I'm home." The woman in the picture didn't answer. She just looked at me. Somehow, I felt she'd heard me. I began cleaning with Grandma's old white and blue checkered cloth, wiping the tables, sofa, and floors spotless. Then I placed the remade qipao neatly inside a rosewood chest, set Grandma's portrait straight on the table, added a white porcelain incense burner, and laid out her favorite lotus pastries and lychees. After everything was ready, I changed into a dark green qipao, lit 3 incense sticks, and placed them in the burner. Pale smoke rose and drifted before Grandma's portrait. I knelt and bowed until my forehead touched the floor. First bow. Thank you for raising me for 26 years. Second, thank you for protecting me for 26 years. Third, thank you for loving me for 26 years. I sat upright and watched ash fall silently into the white porcelain burner. I knew Grandma would approve. She loved beauty and cleanliness. Even bedridden, she kept seasonal flowers by her pillow. Gardenias in spring, jasmine in summer, osmanthus in fall, winter sweet in winter. When petals fell, she hated to sweep them away. Uncle Chen said that when Grandma was young, her heels clicked down the old stone street, and everyone turned to look. The eldest daughter of the Shen family had once been the most glamorous woman in the city. She'd seen wealth, beauty, and every kind of grand occasion. Yet Grandma hid herself like the qipao hid jade, gold thread, and gems. She let everyone call her biased, cold, stingy, and backward. Her children treated her like an ATM. My aunt called her treasures junk. She waited for the girl she scolded in public to grow up and see the truth. She hid her true self so her granddaughter could grow up safe. The smoke faded and the ash settled. I stood before Grandma's portrait. I smiled and spoke softly. "Grandma, I finally see you." Grandma's portrait held the same expression, lips pressed together, eyes calm.